Well, just to start by saying a really warm welcome. This is the third of our series of winter webinars. So really appreciate everyone signing in tonight and joining us. Taking the time out, so it's very much appreciated. And just looking down the list here, really, I just love to see we've got so many different people in different countries, and that's really what love.golf is all about. So I can see there's the US, there's Panama, there's Canada, there's England, Scotland, we have Wales, and I'm sorry if I've missed a few more. But that's great, so thank you very much. And I think just now we can get underway. I think just looking down the list as well, we must have, it's either a 50-50 gender split, or I could possibly reckon it maybe 60-40 in favour of women. So yes, exactly. Wow. This just has to be the way forward for golf. Imagine if key decisions for the future of our game, and particular when it comes to female participation, replicated the diversity I see in front of me now. I think you'll all agree, golf would be in a really different place. And yeah, I know it's going to take some time, but I think that time is coming. So it's fantastic looking down the list to see that real, that diversity. Before I introduce you to tonight's presenter, I just wonder if I can take the opportunity just to send out a few reminders to the coaches. So just starting with a few logistics, and just also to let you know, we are also broadcasting live to our Facebook group. That is a closed group, so don't worry, we're not broadcasting across the whole of social media. It is closed, but if there's anybody watching on that stream that now wants to take part in the interactive part of this live stream, then if you tap on the link, and then you can come over and join us now. If we have any tech issues on the night, for coaches, if you just pop a post into your WhatsApp group, any issues connecting or sound or video, etc. And Carl, who's on this call, will be able to help you. For our guests, I'm afraid you'll probably be stuck with me. So any issues, just post me a message, and then I'll speak to Carl, and he'll also make contact with you. But hopefully all will go well. And I think before we get underway, it would just be really remiss of me not to acknowledge the scenario that most of us are in at the moment. I think we're all experiencing some form of a lockdown restriction, and it's really tough on so many different levels. And so I'd just like to take the time out to really say that love.golf and myself, we are here for you. Yeah, golf is really important, but the bigger picture is the safety and well-being of you, our coaches. And so with that in mind, I just wanted to let you know that we have added some additional platforms so that we can stay in contact. For example, I've set up a love.golf club on Strava. So any runners out there, or maybe anyone just thinking of getting started, please just let me know and I'll get you added so we can share our weekly mileage, or in my case, you can check out my many injuries and aches and general excuses. We'll also continue to populate our Facebook group, and remember there is a task that's currently running on there at the moment, and there are prizes. And of course, the WhatsApp groups are always there for you to chat. And please remember, they are your groups. We'll post updates, but your conversations don't always need to be formal and sensible. And of course, my phone is always on if anyone would like to call me. And perhaps most importantly, our Friday socials are coming back, and they will start again this Friday, 3:30 p.m. UK time. And for anyone that hasn't attended one of those before, there's only really two things that you need to know. Number one, you must at all times be accompanied by a drink of your preference, of course. And number two, golf talk is absolutely forbidden. Okay, so just back to tonight before we get started. As always, we'd love to receive your questions. We've actually received quite a few, as some of you will have seen on WhatsApp at the moment. So we do have quite a few for Mandy, but the chat is now open and it will remain open during Mandy's presentation. So please do feel free to pop your question into the chat box, and Mike will pick them up and he'll ask them on your behalf in the Q&A session following Mandy's presentation. A couple of housekeeping rules. Just please can I ask you to keep your microphones muted, but you're very welcome, and we would encourage you to keep your videos on. It's really hard presenting to a row of blank screens, and so I know Mandy would love to see you and hopefully receive a few thumbs up and smiles along the way. Now it gives me real great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. And I'm going to start by just saying, ever wondered what it must be like to fly a fast jet in a combat situation? Probably not. Well, our guest speaker fought hard to achieve her ambition to be a Royal Air Force pilot. She was only the second woman to fly a Tornado GR4 on the front line and completed 3 tours of duty and over 45 combat missions across Iraq. She's recently launched her best-selling book, An Officer and a Gentleman, best title ever, Mandy. And today she shares the story that took her to the front line. So please welcome Mandy Hickson.
Thanks so much, Alistair. That is fantastic. Right, I'm just going to share my screen and then we will be good to go. Great stuff. Right. Okay, all looking good. So ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure to be here to join you all this evening. And I've talked about tonight, it's going to be about changing the flight path, because I think it's so relevant to where you're at in love.golf as well, but also where we all need to be, of just having that different mindset just to tackle what we're going through at the moment. But I could spend a long time describing the world in which I've come from, but I think sometimes it's simply easier to invite you all to step into my office.
Roger, and you are clear for display. The wind at the moment 29011, crosswind 7 from the right.
There you have it, guys. That is how you take a 17-year career and you just compress it into a 1-minute pop video. I think that's the way forward in life, is it not? So I'm done. Any questions? No. Basically, I left the Air Force almost exactly 10 years ago, and without too much of an idea what to do, apart from training to be an airline pilot, I fortuitously ended up stumbling into the world of speaking. I have really enjoyed this career for the last 10 years. I have felt humbled to be invited all over the world to share my story. And I'll be honest, my career was going quite well until this small bug came along. And obviously, like many other things, completely put a stop to all of the events industries and sort of the celebration of what we were doing around the world. And it basically knocked me for 6. Suddenly, I didn't seem to have a career anymore. And it basically took me right down. I rode in that old Corona coaster, as we call it. And it made me think about what was important to me. And so I sat down one day and I wrote down all the words that really made a difference to me. And words came up that I would not have expected to before. Things like gratitude, mindfulness, kindness. But 2 words just kept on coming back: resilience and purpose. And I realized with this horror that I was suddenly feeling I was lacking a purpose. And so I thought, right, what do I need to get done? What are the missions? What would my purpose be for this year? Well, I had a small job, as Alistair very rightly said, on the back burner, which was this book called An Officer, Not a Gentleman. And basically, it had taken me 3 years to get to this point, but I never seemed to have the time to finish it. Well, suddenly I did. And so in June, I finally got this one out on Amazon. I self-published it, sold over 5,500 copies so far. It's been a #1 bestseller within aviation. And I've been blown away by the outcome and the response I've received to that. But I still felt in some ways that I was still missing a direction and a purpose. And so I looked around and I thought, well, what can I do to help in this situation? Because I'd always been someone that ran towards a crisis. Well, I contacted my local hospital and I said, what job can I do? Is there any volunteering that you need to be done? Now, to put this in context, I live with my husband and my 2 teenage boys. So one thing I seem to spend my entire life doing at home is laundry. So when I said, where can I help? They said, we need someone with your specialized skills. In the laundry, yes. Basically, for months and months on end, I have been in the basement of Winchester Hospital in the UK, folding and tumble drying and washing all the scrubs. But you know what? It was a really humbling experience. And in fact, I start back again tomorrow as they're going back into a state of alert, because it makes you realize that there's always going to be sticking points within any system. We're all cogs in this big machine. We all need everything to be working well to get that outcome at the end. And this was a small point that was just holding up the system. They couldn't get enough of the PPE to the front line. And I felt really honored to be able to do that job and be able to help out. And I'm not social distancing, by the way, because that man is my husband. So the 2 of us did it, but fortunately not together, because I'd had enough of him by then. But it couldn't have been further removed from flying this 35 million pounds worth of hardware. You know, I loved the Tornado GR4 and my time on it. I never realized, though, how few women had ever flown this until in February, about 5 years ago, I was invited to London to a Tornado pilots reunion. Now, I was really excited by this as a concept. I opened the doors of this bar to be met by a sea of 400 men. I thought, happy days, because I had been married for a really long time. But I started to look around the room and I thought, hold on, there should be at least one other woman here. There were 2, as it happened, out of the 400. There was Jo on my left, who was the very first female Tornado pilot and fast jet pilot in the UK. I was the second, then Kirsty on my right was the third, and she also went on to fly in the Red Arrows. You know, we had this photo taken, we popped it out onto social media. We asked the question, what's the collective noun for a group of female Tornado pilots? That was a mistake, basically. We had this mirage of banter and basically horrific comments. But one I really liked was, you're a flamboyance. So I'm sticking with that one. This is what we're going to call ourselves, a trio of flamboyance of Tornado pilots. There's only been 5 women, basically, that have ever flown the Tornado GR4 on the front line. And one thing I loved about my job is the fact that when you go to work, every single day is different. On one day, you take off in a jet that's clean, we call it, when there's nothing hanging from it. You're performing to its maximum G-force, pulling up to 9 times the force of gravity. At 9G, your body becomes the same weight as a Formula One car. You're quite literally pinned in your seat, looking for your opponent, because you're involved in dogfighting, basically trying to shoot the other aeroplane down. Now, as I'm talking, there are 2 words that are going across everyone's minds. I can see Lily, yes, she's there going, Top Gun. Yes. Well, do you know what? So was I. And I turned up to my squad and I thought, it's time to change my name from Mandy, because it just didn't hold the right amount of gravitas as the likes of Maverick and Viper and Iceman. So I thought, what shall I change my name to? What shall my call sign be? I was hoping for Ice Maiden, because I thought that was a good message to hand out. But you don't get to choose your own call sign. I'm 6 foot tall. There was a program on in America at the time called Sesame Street. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the wonderful world of Big Bird. Now, this was 20 years ago, but for 17 years, I basically wore Big Bird across my chest. And I'm so pleased that we have moved on from the time of this. But this is truly what I love to do. You know, taking off in this jet, flying off through the valleys of the Lake District, popping round the corner into Wales, looking up onto the hillsides and seeing someone not playing golf, but often seeing somebody walking. And you would know they are enjoying the peace and quiet of the countryside. And you think, aha, they cannot hear or see me yet, but I can see them. Your hands migrate to your throttles. You get an overwhelming urge to suddenly ram them into full reheat. The flames come pouring out the back of the jet and you're thrust back into your seat as you accelerate to just under 700 100 miles an hour. At that critical stage of flying, one wrong move, it all goes horribly wrong. So what do? Turn the jet on its side, and as you go past, give a very casual and jaunty wave, basically, as you fly right by, only to be caught on camera on this occasion. No sooner had I landed, I heard this tannoy, "Could Big Bird please come to the boss's office?" I thought, oh gosh, what have I done this time? He said, "Mandy, have you been waving at the sponsors?" I'm sorry, taxpayers, by the way, similar things. I said, "I have, sir." And he goes, "Oh my God, there's a brilliant picture that hits the internet." He said, "Blow it up. I want it on the squadron wall." But do you know what? I was so lucky. I feel honoured to have been able to serve my country, to have done the job I did. And it all started off as a young girl at the age of 13. Now that's what innocence looks like. I basically joined the Air Training Corps on the very, very first day they opened the doors to girls. I joined not because I had a passion for flying, but because my mum pointed out I went to an all-girls school and it might be my only opportunity in life to meet boys. And so I thought that's good enough reason for me. So I joined. And it was while I was there, I flew. And suddenly, it was as if all the stars had aligned. I suddenly had that purpose, that direction that I'd been needing. The reason why I was going through, education fell into place. And I set my sights at that point on becoming one of the very first female fast jet pilots. But I will be honest, there were quite a few obstacles in my way. To begin with, out of about 3,000 pilots, only one ends up in a fast jet cockpit. So competition is fierce. I, at the age of 17, applied for a flying scholarship. This is me on the day I received my private pilot's license, about to take my parents flying for the first time. A really exciting moment. But women were still not allowed to be pilots in the Air Force. I went off to university. I joined this club called the University Air Squadron, basically a sponsored club run by the RAF. It was while I was here in my second year, they changed the rules, allowing women to join as pilots. I couldn't believe it. My timing was perfect. I immediately applied to join. I went through all of the tests, and on day 3, I was informed I had failed all the aptitude tests to be a pilot. Now, I was devastated. I had over 100 hours by now, but I thought, well, you're allowed to do them twice. So I waited a year. I went back, I resat them and did them all again. And this time, you'll be pleased to hear, completely failed them all again. And that's now the end of the line. I can go no further. And it would have been, had it not been for the gentleman at the bottom of that picture holding that trophy. He was the boss of my university club, and he could not understand why someone who had proved herself to be a very capable pilot in the air couldn't pass a computer aptitude test. And so he believed in me. He went the extra mile for me when I saw that there was only no way forward. The RAF offered me a commission at that point to become an air traffic controller. And under his guidance, I took it, not because I wanted to do that job, but because I thought it's a foot in the door. And once I'm in, we can make our case. I always believed, and I had this true vision that I would become a pilot. And you might say, oh yes, 2020 hindsight vision is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But actually, I can show you a video of when I'm 20 years old. I've just failed all the tests to be a pilot. I've just accepted my commission to become an officer as an air traffic controller, and there's no way in the world I can officially become a pilot. Listen to what I have to say.
How are you?
Very well, thank you, sir.
I'm just happy. I love planes.
Good.
Now, you're not RAF yet either, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm joining in October, but I go to Cranwell.
You're on the same scheme as Matt?
That's right, yes, at the moment.
What are you flying then?
I'm flying Bulldogs at the moment, but hopefully on to Monte Carlos.
There aren't many women flying aircraft in the RAF, are there?
No, not very many at all. That's probably because they only started recruiting in 1990, but they're getting to be more and more of us as a breed.
I want to ask you, whatever drove you to wanting to get into aircraft? It's quite a boysy sort of area.
It is.
You're not macho, are you?
Well, I hope not. Well, my grandpa was a pilot, and I think that basically was my lead into becoming a pilot, hopefully, in the RAF.
So, after you've done your Bulldog, after you've flown a Tucano, you might get to fly a Jaguar. What kind of qualities to get to fly one of these fellas?
Well, I suppose you have to be pretty aggressive, and you have to be, well, excellent all-round pilot to actually get up to the standard of fast jets anyway.
You reckon you could cut it?
Hope so. Fingers crossed.
So So you see, there were lots of hopefuls in there, lots of fingers crossed. And with those fingers very tightly crossed, I joined. And it was like jumping off a cliff and hoping my parachute would open. But I had the vision. I wrote hundreds of letters to anybody that would hear my case. And eventually, I think I just wore them down because I finally got one back. And it just said, "Dear Flying Officer Wells, the RAF would like to give you a branch change to pilot." And I thought, yes, I have broken the system. And then it said, "We're taking you on as a test case. We'd like to see how far through the flying training system someone with no aptitude can get before they fail." Can you imagine it? You're being given the chance of a lifetime, but being told you won't succeed. Now, that was a hard one to deal with because it doesn't matter how much we believe in ourselves. When we're told we will fail, we're waiting for that to happen. And that's why it's so important that, you know, not just in flying, but in so many different walks of life, golf included, that we talk very much around that mindset, that visualization of the seeing where we're going. You know, we wouldn't just constantly hit a golf ball into the dark, would we? You need that feedback. You need that positive affirmation to know where you're going. Are you doing it right? And that's what I needed. And that was going to be one of my biggest challenges. I got the whole way through flying training pretty quickly, and I ended up at this stage flying the Hawk out of RAF Valley in Anglesey. It's where Prince William was based, but sadly we never overlapped. Otherwise, I do believe the royal wedding would have been very different. What can I say? I was 3 trips away from graduating and gaining my RAF wings, and I failed a flight. Not a problem, I thought. I'd failed a few in the past, as had everyone else. I took it the next day, I failed it again, and suddenly I'm in a complete spiral of loss of confidence. 3 more flights and I'm being put up for a chop ride. It does what it says on the tin. If you don't pass the flight, you're leaving. The trip I'd failed, I'd learned how to fly the aircraft, maneuver at low level. I'd learned bombing, strafing. I'd learned close formation and navigation. And we were putting all of these skills together in something called battle. And it's when 2 aeroplanes head off really low level, down often as low as 100 feet in some areas of the country. You're trying to stick with your wingman 3/4 of a mile apart at all times. Why? Because there's an enemy airborne. They are also called our instructors, by the way. Now they're trying to get behind you into your 6 o'clock position, and you have got one blind spot when you're flying. It's directly behind your jet. You can't physically see into that space. So if I'm a singleton, guaranteed to fail. But give me a wingman and suddenly you have got someone looking out for you, watching your 6, you know, giving you that support that you need. But it means you must coordinate every single turn. You can't just turn to the left, you're 2 singletons. So you must think ahead, projecting, having great situational awareness. So I'm coming up to a turn, we both pull up, we cross at a perpendicular angle, and then we roll out in perfect formation. That's what I was failing. Every night I used to go back to my room and have a full mental dress rehearsal. And going back to that visualization, practicing it, you know, flicking switches on a cardboard cockpit, basically answering my own radio calls. And there's a knock on my door. It's one of my course mates, Rob. Now, I've been with Rob, who's the guy just to my right in this picture. He's old enough to fly. He's not 12, by the way. But he basically said to me, "Mandy, you know, we want to take you out this evening." I said, "Rob, I'm going nowhere with you all." I knew they'd all finished the course. They'd all been celebrating. So when he said, "No, I want to take you out," I said, "No." And he said, "Please, will you trust us?" And when he said that, I thought, what do I have to lose? Anyway, he took me down to the bike sheds. And I'll just be honest, the trust waned straight away. But we got onto our bikes. We cycled to the other side of the airfield where there was this big parade square. It was dimly lit in the lights. And as we cycled on, out of the gloom, the rest of my course mates all appeared, and they had been very busy that day, making their bikes into aeroplanes. Yes, these guys would now give up the next 3 hours of their evening to cycle in battle formation up and down this parade square, yelling 30 left, 60 right, rotate. We did all the maneuvers I couldn't grasp in the air on the ground, obviously without the vertical separation because it's not Harry Potter, okay. But suddenly the penny dropped and I thought, this is so easy. Why couldn't I not do this before? But I had been stuck in that rut. I had had complete tunnel vision. I had kept on doing my practice and my training in exactly the same way. And I was shocked when my results were exactly the same every single time. And that's why we need our team around us. We need them because they open up our way of thinking. You know, everything from, in your world, the community of coaches, they are there because ultimately we can't have that tunnel vision and that fixation on task. And also we have that blended learning approach where you realize very quickly that everyone has a slightly different way of doing it. And if you can collaborate and bring those together, then everyone can raise their game to the next stage. Now, I flew the next day and I did not know if I'd passed. But at the end, I opened my canopy. My instructor got out from behind me, descended the steps, and I just turned. And as I turned, I saw him kneeling down and kissing the floor. And I thought, that does not bode well. He is so relieved I haven't killed him. He's celebrating the fact he's still alive. And he looked at me and said, what the hell was that? And I thought, oh, this is it. He's going to say I'm chopped. He said, Mandy, I really like you, but you know, you've gone from bad to worse this week. And he said, and yesterday you were horrific. He said, what was that? It was like you'd brought your mojo to work for the first time in ages. Now, I told him the story about what the guys had done. And he said, wow. I said, I know, it was really funny because they'd stuck wings on. He said, it's more than that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mandy, there are only 6 spaces to fly Tornadoes, Harriers and Jaguars, the 3 fast jets at the time. He said, there's 6 spaces on courses starting in about a month's time, but you're number 7. Somebody now on your course is going to have to wait for about a year to start the next stage of his flying training. And when he said that, I have never felt so humbled in my life, because it makes you realize what being part of a team truly is all about. And you realize very quickly that the team is everything, trusting in those people we work with, because together everyone achieves more. And you might say, well, yes, apart from in your story, because evidently someone lost out. But when it was reported up through the chain of command, our squadron commander was blown away by the camaraderie, by that selflessness that he saw within our team. He has the ability to keep one person on as a creamy, and it's when they take the cream of the crop, the top of the class, and they stay on as an instructor. And it meant that every single one of my course graduated onto our aircraft types of choice. Mine was to fly the mighty Finn on 2 Squadron down at RAF Marham in Norfolk. Now, the first opportunity to represent the squadron came on an exercise out in America called Red Flag. The philosophy out there is that you're training harder than you will ever have to fight for real. You're up against the best of the best. American aircrew, these really are top guns. I mean, in fact, there were more buzz-cutted American pilots around than I felt like I was walking onto the set, basically, of Top Gun. It was fantastic, very exciting. But their sole job in life here is to shoot you down, and they were really good at it. We were flying over the Arizona desert, just outside Las Vegas. What can I say? Someone had to go. And I was put to fly out there with a very, very experienced navigator. Now, he sits in your back seat in a Tornado, because there's 2 seats in a Tornado. I was with Michelle Dupont. Now, I was thrilled to be with Michelle, and all the ladies on the call are going, oh, yeah, we know why. George Clooney. Anyway, I was thrilled to be with him because he was a very experienced navigator. And actually having someone with that wealth of knowledge sitting 2 meters behind you as a voice in your ear to guide you, encourage you to take and make the right decisions was the most powerful training tool I could ever have. Now, in fact, I had a hilarious incident with Michelle one evening when I got dressed up for the occasion. We were going out as a squadron. I'd organised a stretch limo and everything. And basically, they'd never seen me out of my grow bag, as the attractive flying suit is called. And so I put a dress on, and I put even some makeup and everything on. I was feeling quite special. And I basically walked in 5 minutes late. All the women are going, oh, yeah, we know the techniques. So I made an entrance, coughed loudly. Everyone looked up. But more importantly, Michelle and my eyes met across the crowded room, and he said, oh, Mandy, you're looking beautiful this evening. Excuse my French accent. At which point the guy next to him, Rich, hit him across the back of the head. He goes, you cannot say that to Mandy. She is one of the boys. At which point Michelle turned back, and with a Gaelic shrug, he said, puh, you Brits, you still have so much to learn about women. And you know what? I was so thrilled because I was thrilled on different levels. One, that Michelle found me very beautifully attractive, but actually it was really important I was being seen as being part of the team, being one of the boys, but it was also a stark reminder that women are different. And it was really important for me to maintain who I was and not just morph into this huge group of men. And I realized at that point that was going to be one of my biggest challenges, was to maintain my identity. Now, after 2 weeks, we were exhausted. It was the best exercise I've ever been on. We were then tasked to bring the jets home. We would be coming back via air-to-air refueling across the Atlantic. Basically, what you have is an airliner like this, which has a hose hanging out the back with a basket on it. And all you have to do is extend your probe, place it in a moving basket, and fill up with fuel. And you're all thinking, well, that looks simple. Now, from the cockpit, you're told not to look at the basket. They say, don't look at it. You'll look at it, you'll lunge, you'll miss. And if you do, you're basically listening to your navigator who's going up a bit, right a bit, right a bit. You're in thick cloud. You can barely sometimes see the jet that you're formating on for 4 hours at a time, staring intently at a wingtip. And that can sometimes lead to clear air turbulence. So this is no longer a stable platform, but every time you go towards it, the basket moves. If you ram your probe in too hard, you will damage the basket and you will ingest the metal into your engine, which is not a good position to be in. You have the help, though, and the guidance of your wingmen, who, as you know, they're there to support and encourage. As you're going up, they're going, oh, she's missed again. It was really lovely, a lovely moment. Anyway, we did the final tanking bracket. We landed in the Azores, and I thought it's going to be a simple last day, especially when we woke up to this stunning blue skies. But I could not have been more wrong. We entered the final tanking bracket, and we went into this wall of cloud that was so thick you could barely see the jet next to you. And it was at this moment I heard a horrific radio call. America had just shut their airspace. We could think of no situation in history whereby a continent would shut down. But very quickly, and in the military, we're always taught this simple mantra: control the controllables. We might have had no understanding of the bigger picture, but what we were very clear of is that if a continent had shut down and we're in thick cloud, all the aircraft would be diverted to the north or the south or turned back. We potentially had a huge risk of a mid-air collision. And so we started to scan the airspace in front of us using our air-to-air radar to clear our passageway through the cloud. The date, of course, was September the 11th. And as we came over the UK, we heard the next radio call. A small aircraft, much like this one, was travelling along the south coast. It was travelling directly towards an American aircraft carrier. There's an exclusion zone of 5 nautical miles around that carrier, but this aircraft had not read the notice to airmen that day, informing of the position of this ship. The Americans believed that it was a terrorist, and what we heard in real time was that they were loading live weapons and they were about to shoot this aircraft down with a surface-to-air missile from their ship. We have no concept of what's happened in America, but we realised with immediate effect that we were the nearest airborne asset. We had to do something. We realised this was no joke. But we're sitting there on a beautiful September's afternoon now, thinking, what on earth has happened? We asked air traffic control, could we assist? And in the end, they gave us radar vectors. We started to dive down from 30,000 feet to approach this aircraft. We tried to reach it on every radio frequency. And right at the end, just before we got there, we got through. We got them to change their course. He had 2 minutes to run before what would have been a disaster over UK airspace that day. And they diverted their course, missing the carrier. And it changed my future because I was almost immediately posted out to Iraq, where I would spend the next 3 years on rolling 4 monthly detachments. We were based at a place called Ali Al Salem, just outside Kuwait City. This is my squadron. I had the most incredible leadership example of the boss, a guy called Steve Hillier, who was the former chief of the air staff, which means he's head of the Air Force. His deputy is the current chief of the air staff. So you know what, to say that I had the most incredible leadership models to be aspiring to would be an understatement. The team I flew with out there were incredibly experienced. I was normally the most junior. And again, you're put to fly with someone very experienced because it really helps you with your decision making. But there are 50 trades in the Air Force. And what I would say is, whenever there's a conflict, the media come along and they only interview pilots or air crew. But you need every single one of those 50 trades to be pulling their weight, coming together. Air traffic controllers, flight ops, catering staff, medics, police forces, engineers. You know what? We're all cogs in a machine. And my time in the laundry in Winchester just was a stark reminder of that. Every single person has to pull their weight to come together to create that end product. Now, I would often go to work and be given a map that would look much like this. Circles are surface-to-air missiles. The arrows are where the troops are on the move. And the stars are not, as one little girl asked me, are they to make my map look pretty? No, the stars are basically huge guns that shoot up to 30,000 feet, basically. And then we had our targets. Now, you might be thinking that's a lot of targets to bomb, but initially my job out there was a reconnaissance pilot. I was just taking photos. I would just join all the dots, and basically that route would last about 4 hours, often taking off at 10 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, on my penultimate night out there, I was going home the next day, and in the run up to this night, the arterial routes between Baghdad in the north and Al-Basra had often been busy. We'd been highlighted by missiles or shot at by guns. But once we got down there to the bottom, to the Saudi Arabia border, excuse me, in 4 months, nothing had ever happened. And I can tell you this, when nothing has ever happened, there's going to be one big assumption. Nothing will be going to happen. So as I swept up that last target, I started to relax. I was going home the next day. I'd lost loads of weight, had a great suntan. I was thinking about a new dress I was going to buy, actually, when suddenly, and without warning, Ringo yelled, "Mandy, brake right!" I instantly reacted. I slammed my throttles fully forward. I rolled quickly to 120 degrees angle of bank. I pulled hard towards the ground, and he started pumping out these. They're flares. They burn at an incredibly hot intensity, and they act as a decoy to a surface-to-air missile that had fired, locking onto the heat of my engines. This was a maneuver I had practiced, by the way, hundreds of times before, but never for real. Getting it wrong was really not an option at this moment. As the missiles took the flares, they exploded about 1.5 miles from the jet, and we relaxed. We radioed through what had happened, and chaos broke out on the airwaves. There were 80 aircraft airborne from 4 different countries with 3 different nationalities, and we were all then tasked to basically, the way it works is that once an aggressive act is made towards any one of those coalition aircraft, you're tasked to carry out an attack on the target. Ours was a radar station. We radioed through what had happened, and I'll be honest, the commander-in-chief told us to stand by while a plan was formulated. We were basically, where you can see the flashes, our target was back into Iraq. We had exactly enough fuel to get from where we were to drop our weapons and return to base, but not an ounce more. I was leading my first ever combat mission that night. And despite being the most junior on my team, every decision was going to be made by me. Now, as we did the working out, we're taught a decision-making model. It's called DODAR. Diagnose the problem and share it with your team. Ask your team for their options, what they think, before you as the leader even utter a single word. You listen to the options they give you, and you as the leader make the decision. You then assign the tasks and you review it. Now, I ran through DODAR and I decided to head down towards the tanker in Saudi Arabia. It would open up our options. We got down there and there was a massive queue. It was like toilet gate at Tesco's at the start of lockdown in England. And I queued up, and as I got closer, I suddenly learned with horror it wasn't our jet. It was not our English tanker. It was an American tanker. Ours had broken and had been replaced by a tanker I had never refueled on from before. I was not qualified to do so. My boss is my number 2. I said, "Sir, may I have a go?" He said, "Why not?" I had 2 attempts to refuel and I wasn't successful. I said to my backseater, "I'm stopping," and he just said, "Press on." I've got 4 months of fast jet flying under my belt. He has got 10 years. I am the captain, and yet he is way more experienced, and I'm being told to carry on. And in that moment, I thought, if I do, it's going to prevent the rest of my team from having a go. We've got a job to do tonight, and if it doesn't involve me, due to my lack of skill, training, or experience, then I have other people more qualified. So I moved across onto the wing. My boss and my number 3 went back into Iraq after successfully refueling, located the target. They destroyed it. I landed back at base, feeling like a complete and utter failure. The first thing that happened after we got out the jet was that my backseater put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Mandy, that was a really good call." I said, "What? You told me to press on and then you've been really chilly ever since." And he said, I know, but he said, it's disappointment. He said, my last job, I was a trials officer. I was involved in the trial and the design and development of a weapon that we are carrying tonight, and it's never been dropped in any theatre of war in the world. We were about to be the first team to drop this bomb in anger, except you couldn't get it in. That is a technical term, by the way. And he said, and I was really, really angry, and I was emotionally involved, but no good decisions ever get made when there's emotion involved in them. And he said, you took that away from me and you made the right call. Well done. Shoulders started to go back a bit more, and then we held the debrief. Every single trip we fly, we debrief it. I can imagine much like a training session that you've had in golf, whereby you have to go through what happened, the facts, why does it happen, what's the cause, but you're always trying to get to the cure, aren't you? How can you be better? How can we encourage more women? How can we do that? And by going through that same funnel every single time, you can take 2 or 3 key learning points from every single item, and you just use those to increase your performance every single time. I went through the debrief, and right towards the end, there was a phone call. It was the Commander-in-Chief congratulating our formation on a successful mission that night. We were the only team to go back into Iraq and successfully destroy our target. And it was in that point when I took a deep breath, a huge sigh of relief, and I realized that we had been successful. And I'm going back to that whole feeling of what's important, to be part of a team and not just focus on me. And actually, the reason I mention that story is because the leadership I witnessed that night was the most outstanding leadership I have ever seen in my life from my boss. He empowered his junior team member to lead when the going was simple. When we got tackled by or targeted by the missile, let's say the complexity went through the roof, is an understatement. It would have been very easy for him to say, I have control, I'm taking over, but he didn't. He let me continue. And in doing so, I learned more about myself, about decision-making, accountability, teamwork, and leadership than I ever could if I was just taken over and had to then follow. And it's so important we empower our people, isn't it? That we empower our teams and those within our entire organization, be it the community of coaches, to actually think outside the box, to think for ourselves. And we can never tell people they're empowered. All we can never do is create the right skills, the right environment to allow that growth. And I was blessed to have that. Now, when I left the Air Force, I wasn't quite ready to hang up my flying boots after 17 years. So I joined as a volunteer reservist, basically, which was very exciting. And this is me basically flying on a tutor. I've done this for the weekends for the last 8 years. And I just want to tell you about a young girl that I flew with. She was my last cadet of the day, 14 years old. She walked out to the aircraft, and I'm going to take her up for half an hour to show her what flying's all about. She walked out to the aircraft. Her parachute was on her back. Shoulders were bent over. She had an angry look on her face. I said, hi, my name's Flight Lieutenant Mandy Hickson. What's yours? And she said, Emily. I thought, joy to the world. I have half an hour with this young lady. At this point, as she's strapping in, I'm looking at her face. She's got so much eye makeup on and mascara that I'm thinking, I wonder under G-force if the weight of the mascara might prevent her from opening her eyes. At this point, she's grunting, strapping in. I say, making her at ease, putting her at ease, open questions, monosyllabic responses. We get airborne though, and it's pilot's paradise. White fluffy clouds. We start to fly up, down, left, right. I give her control. She's good. Very, very good. Very natural. I said, wow. I said, let's do some turns. Initially, we did a medium level turn, 30-degree angle of bank. She nailed it. Most cadets up and down by 200 or 300 feet, but not Emily. So that's very impressive. Let's see if you can do a 60-degree turn now. I said, this is much harder, Emily. What you need to do, at which point she held her hand between us and said, don't tell me. Read about that in a book somewhere. I thought, oh my God, this could be fascinating, because when you roll to 60 degrees, unless you add full power and pull back on the stick, the nose will come slicing through the horizon. You'll end up in a spiral descent to death. So I thought, crack on. So, by the way, I've never lost any yet. I just want to say that. So I give her control, expecting the nose to come down, but no, she adds the power. She pulls back on the stick. She did it perfectly. It was so annoying, I can't tell you. I said, let's do some aerobatic maneuvers. I said, I'm going to teach you now how to do a loop. So we lower the nose to 140 knots. We accelerate. We get there. We tense our legs and our tummy, otherwise the blood will pool in our feet. And when we get to 140 knots. We pull hard back on the stick, pulling 4 times the force of gravity. Over the top we go, keeping our wings straight and level. Make a yee-haw sound as we go through the horizon. Compulsory in my aircraft. And there is, when you pull out the bottom, don't be scared. The whole aeroplane will probably shake violently. It means you hit perfection. It means you're going through your own slipstream. It means you've done a perfect circle. So I did my loop, and let's say there was no shaking. I give her control. I have control, ma'am. She grunts, she pushes, she pulls. We go through the horizon. I yell, yee-haw. She did not. Slightly embarrassed at this point, but she was not. She pulls out the bottom of her loop, and the whole aeroplane shook violently. And she looked across at me, and she suddenly had this radiant smile on her face. And that smile said to me, I'm better than you. And I thought, I'm going to break you. I'm sorry, going to motivate you and empower you. No, I wanted to break her. Honestly, I threw everything at this girl. She was just brilliant. We landed this aircraft. We were taxiing in. I said, you know what, Emily? I've been flying now for about 28 years. And all that time, I've never flown with anyone with so much raw, natural talent as you. I said, is this something you might want to do? She said, I bet you say that to everyone. I bet that's your line. I could have shaken her at that point, but you're not allowed to touch them. I said, I've never said it to anyone before. Is this something you might want to do? Because you know what? You are brilliant. She said, you're joking. I said, no. She said, oh, ma'am, I really can't believe you just said that, because quite frankly, it's the most exciting thing I've ever done. And all I've ever wanted to do was be a pilot. And she said, I was so scared I was going to fail, though. I decided not to try and not to show you I was interested, because I kept on thinking on the bus, if I don't try and I'm not good, then I can always blame it on that. And it made me so sad. And I said, Emily, you can't live your life like that. How many opportunities are going to go whizzing by unless you grab them with both hands? I said, how are you doing at school? And she went, that, hate it. I said, that enables this. And you're brilliant. And you could see her piecing this together. Suddenly, the penny dropped and she went, I get it. I saw this girl a year later. She walked past me in the corridor and I thought, oh my gosh, it's that girl with the eye makeup, actually. And she said, I bet you don't remember me. I thought, I bet I do, actually, because I used you in my speech by then. I said, Emily, isn't it? She said, oh, ma'am, I am so pleased you're here. I just wanted to tell you, I got all my GCSEs, I'm doing my A-levels, and I want to be a pilot. And it makes you realise just how important small things that we do. You know what? And much like golf, we need female role models. We need female coaches, because ultimately, we will only get that transference when people can actually see themselves in that position. And I suddenly realized, you know what, I'd been about to go into a life in the airlines at that point, and I realized that that was not where I needed to go. I needed to actually use my knowledge and my position that I'd been and my experiences to share it with young people, especially in schools. And I made that my mission. I've spoken at hundreds of schools in the past 10 years, basically getting particularly girls to think outside the box, to think about careers that they might not have had ideas about, and to realize that anything is possible. And we can have dreams, but unless we put them into action, we're going nowhere. We've got to dream it, believe it, and do it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Mandy. That was absolutely fascinating. I just want to say to everyone, if you have got a question for Mandy, the chat is open, so just pop your question in there and I will ask it to her shortly. We've got a bit of a pipeline of questions here, Mandy, so I'll try and get through as many of them as I possibly can. The first few are kind of some quick fire ones from Pete, who has asked, what is the fastest you've ever flown in miles per hour?
Oh, miles per hour. Well, basically the problem is you can't give it in miles per hour, because once you go over a certain speed, it comes up as a Mach number.
He's also said Mach as well, so I'll give him credit for that.
The fastest I'd ever been was actually in a Tornado F3, I hate to say, which is the fighter version of the Tornado. And I went at 1.3 Mach, which is equivalent probably of about 800 miles an hour. And we were low level over the sea. And so you drop a huge sonic boom behind you. But it was so far out in the North Sea that no one could hear it.
And for those of anyone who's like me, Mach relates to the speed of sound, doesn't it?
Speed of sound, yeah. So Mach 1 is the speed of sound. So basically, when you say you drop a boom, it's normally you're going through the speed barrier. Sound the sound speed barrier.
Got you. The second one is, do you miss the adrenaline rush?
Yeah, do you know what? It's a really interesting one, actually, because often people say to me, oh, you must really miss the flying. And I do miss the flying to some degree, but this is a really bizarre thing to say, is that I miss the camaraderie more. You know, because I went from being part of this unit, this team, this family, to suddenly being by myself and running my own business and basically turning up at events and, in the fold, but then gone. And so actually I really miss that sense of being part of a team, actually. And that was probably more of a loss than the adrenaline rush. I now ski basically at a very fast speed, which is where I sort of get my adrenaline rush from. But I always thought if I bought a motorbike, I'd probably kill myself. So I've steered away from fast cars and motorbikes because I am an adrenaline junkie, and I know that. So I've tried to curb that side of it now.
Fantastic. So Abby has asked, how did you gain recognition early in your career, and how were you treated by male work colleagues? And I suppose just to add to that, what was kind of running through your head on that first day?
So when I was going through the whole of training, I'll be brutally honest, I didn't notice it at all. I was part of a really, really small team. So I went to university. Some of the guys joined the Air Force with me. Some of those guys ended up on all the different flying courses. And it's a 4.5-year training program. So I have now been with the same sort of guys, a few alternating on different courses, but generally the same guys going the whole way through. And I was just Mandy, or Big Bird. I never really thought anything differently. I didn't see myself as a pioneer. I didn't see myself as different. I had a lovely moment, and it was really, and I'm not going to do this, is not a plug for my book, but going through my book brought back all the memories of this, because one of the moments that I realized that my team was so behind me was when we were at Valley, and one of the younger guys on my course went to the instructors, and he said, I don't like the way that all the instructors make one sexist comment to Mandy every day. And no one meant it with any sort of malicious intent, but every single one would just go, oh, I can see which jet Mandy's parked in. It's obviously the one that's not straight. And it was all banter, and it was banter, and they meant it as banter. But when you receive one comment from 20 different men, it starts to wear you down a bit. And I think my skin had got so thick I wasn't hearing it anymore. And it took one of the guys on my course to say, we don't like it. And then, so that was sort of fine in training. And I'm sorry, I should become a politician because I'm answering too long. But basically, when I got to my squadron, it hit me like a bolt of lightning, because suddenly I didn't have that family unit. I was now with 40 men who I had never met before, and I was going to be going on detachments with them, living with them, and I needed to get to know them really quickly. And I also realized that I had to try and keep my identity. I mean, I walked into the squadron, and to put it into perspective, every screensaver was a naked woman. So I made them all into naked men, and the next day they were all landscapes. So you know what, make you smaller. I mean, to put it, to give you that level, I've never worn female long johns. You have to wear long johns under your flying kit. Mine always had a wide front in. For some reason, they just didn't have the ability to buy some female long johns. And small things like this, do start to wear you down a bit. And it was challenging at times. I cannot lie, especially when I was in the Gulf. For months on end, having not one woman to talk to, it was a nightmare. I would ring home, and I was with my now husband, but he was my boyfriend then. And I'd try not to ring him. We had one 20-minute phone call home a week, and he would get about 3 minutes because like, hi, how are you? Yeah, I can't bear to speak to another man. I just want to ring my mum, my sister, and my friends, because I just wanted female company. Because you know what? Men and women are different, and women do speak differently. And it was really important that I tried to, get that sense of normality by just talking about emotions and the price of fish, let's just say, to some of my female friends,
Yeah, no, and one of the things that another one of the coaches has raised, Joe, is kind of along the lines of what you said about the screensavers. She wanted some advice on how to get her voice heard in a what is a predominantly male profession, and also that she's experiencing something where male colleagues are sort of undermining her as a coach and a professional. Any kind of more words that you can say around that, Mandy?
Yeah, I would say believe in yourself. Okay, and that is something that I just don't think we can ever emphasize enough, is that you will have brilliant ideas. We need to get rid of this imposter syndrome. Lily and I were just talking about it while we were waiting to come on. Is women are much more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome than men. And again, I was talking about that in my book a lot, because I think I often doubted myself, thinking, am I good enough? You know, especially because I didn't pass those tests. So that was always in the back of my mind. But what I would say to you is, you will have brilliant ideas and you are probably very, very good at what you do. Have faith in that. And actually, it's when you sit there and you're quiet for a moment and you listen to the conversation, you ask, you have better ideas. And so it's really important that we, you know, believe in ourselves enough to make our voices heard, but we don't need to do it in an aggressive way. We need to do it in the way that sits well with who you are. So don't ever pretend to be someone you're not. We don't need to do that. You know, we have different skills and often different levels of emotional intelligence. And actually, that's why, you know, mixed gender teams always work better than single gender teams every single time. And so that's really, really important that you just do so by having that belief in yourself and getting your point across in your own manner. Never try to be, because basically, you know, what people want is authentic people around them. And so if you're pretending to be someone you're not, then that is so evident.
Yeah, that's great advice, Mandy. And I think there's a bunch of research around how more diverse teams in a business world make companies more profitable. And that's, you know, that's more women, that's more people from all types of different backgrounds. So definitely belief in your ideas and conviction is the way to go there. Yeah. Sue has asked, the military seems to integrate men and women. Is there a chance, which means there's more of a chance to build mutual respect? In golf, we segregate men and women, and she wonders if that holds us back. And she's asking you, do you think that may hold golf back? Because it permeates everything in golf. It's men's captain, it's women's captain, it's men's locker rooms, it's women's locker rooms. It's everywhere. It's evident. It's in front of you all the time.
Yeah, it is. And I know this very well because my dad's captain of his golf club. And, you know, I've been, even from a little girl at the age of 3, when there was literally, women were not allowed in the bar and you had to go in the side entrance and there was a ladies' locker room. We had to just sit in there while my dad had his lunch. You know, we weren't allowed to even come out of this area. So, you know, I'm very aware of that. But it's very interesting. I was working a lot with Formula One recently, and we were talking about how were women meant to, you know, compete on the same level, the same platform as men, and if they ever wanted to, why shouldn't they do it? And they're bringing out a thing called Formula W, or for women's Formula One. And someone said, is that not a backward step? And they said, but actually, if you look at all sports, you know, it's not about competing necessarily against, but you're right about the sort of the segregation, but it's also, I think, about finding that balance. So, you know what, I never, well, for the first 15 years, I didn't have a women's toilet. We shared toilets, we shared shower rooms, and I can say, women, stick with your women's locker rooms. It's not pleasant, you know. There's certain things that you need to stick with, and that is a real bonus, I can tell you. So be careful what you wish for too much. But no, I definitely agree that, you know, it's because the workplace has to do that and they were forced to do that. So actually it's about creating that change, creating momentum. And, you know, Alistair and I were talking very much about love.golf really being a force behind that. And you know what, we've got so many wonderful female coaches that we can see on the line tonight. You know, you are the people that will create that change without a doubt, because by having strong female role models, people see that, and then you get more and more momentum behind that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice, Mandy. Let's just talk about that time when you kind of had that tough time when you failed a couple of times, and then you had your last sort of shot. Now, I think we're kind of living through times when we're all having to sort of dig a bit deep, find that sort of inner resilience. What can you sort of speak to that experience? What was that like for you? How did you kind of find that sort of inner force to really push yourself forward and get over the line?
Yeah, so there's a lot of chat obviously at the moment about resilience and having to dig deep and everything like that. For me, it was my team. It was my team that got me through. And you know, it's really important when you hear, say, Alistair talking at the start, when he just said, you know what, we are a community, and actually it's about reaching out when we need help. I didn't reach out because what happens when we're stressed is that our shutters go down and we become more and more isolated. But these are the times that we need to be strong enough to say, I need help, or strong enough to ask for the team. So I'd say it's all about looking out for each other. But I did Kilimanjaro last year, it's the year before last, in 2019 in October. And if I'd had time, I'd have shown you a little bit of the video clips, because I was really poorly on the trip, not through altitude sickness, but I picked up a horrific stomach bug. Let's just say, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but they basically told me I shouldn't do the summit night. And I sat there and I thought, control the controllables. I'm going to have to dig deep. What can I do? Well, I can try to rehydrate. I can. So it's a really good mantra, Michael, to say, control the controllables. And if you can't control it, you've got to let it go. So we can't do anything about COVID. We can't change what's happening to us, but what we can do is control the way we feel about it. So we can feel morose about it. We can think it's awful, this has happened, my business has gone. Or we can think, right, I can get fit. I can do exercise classes in my house. I can do that. So it's about sometimes just finding the gratitude in the small things to try to get that mindset back into a really positive place. Because once we're in a positive place, then we can try to move forward with that as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Got a question from Kat, and she's asking how important mentors have been in your journey. Did you seek them out, or did they become mentors through sort of natural circumstances or progression?
I think mentors are essential. Now, we never had a formal mentoring program in the RAF, and I think it's something they really missed a trick with. We had that informal side whereby, like I talked about that boss on that university air squadron going the extra mile. So he would have been a form of a mentor for me. Michel Dupont, a form of mentor, someone that you can ask questions of. But it's been really interesting since leaving the Air Force, actually, because we often talk about mentoring. And I go to companies where often you've got younger members of the team who are given a mentor. And I would say that's not the best way forward, actually. What I would say is self-selected mentors will be so much more powerful and so much more productive to you, than if someone is told they will be your mentor. Because when we want to be, when you're looking for a mentor, what we're looking for that mentorship is someone that we connect with physically and emotionally as well. So, it could be that there was a woman I met spinning, let's just say, Francesca. I loved her. I liked her chat. And I thought, oh my goodness. And we went for a coffee, and then she was talking about her business. And I was like, and she just has become a mentor to me. She's, 10 years older than me. And it's been really, really wonderful having someone as a sounding board, but it's a self-selected mentoring. And basically you can formalize that, because, if you find someone that you admire and you like their leadership style, or you like what they're doing and you think, oh my God, they're fantastic, say to them, informally, would you be happy to be a bit of a mentor for me? If I treat you to lunch every now and then, is there any chance that, and you know what? People love it, because you realize that giving back is way more important than just receiving. And so actually being a mentor is a really, really powerful gift that you can give to someone.
Early on, Mandy, we just asked about equal opportunities in golf. I just wonder what that kind of looks like in the Royal Air Force now, and has things changed an awful lot since your sort of heyday?
So it's a difficult one, actually, Michael. So, Alistair and I were chatting, and he said, for example, on this, we've got about just over 30% basically, or 37% of female. In the Air Force, we're still only about 10%. You know what? It was about 8% when I was in. It's crept up to 10% women. As fast jet pilots, we've got to be about 3%. It's barely any. I mean, to the fact that only 5 women have ever flown, that jet behind me is shocking, isn't it? And so, you know what? How do you create? You can't force people to go into something, but what you can do is create an environment whereby women want to join. And this is something I've never quite got. Is if you've got something that's a fantastic career or a fantastic sport like golf, why would women not want to do it? That's what I always sort of think. And it's about sort of thinking, what is it that is stopping them from doing it? And so if you can start to take away some of those barriers that they put in their mind behind it, then we can hopefully create a more gender equality. We do see there's been a lot that's been done, by the way, with regards to changing the working environments. For example, if you've just had a child, do you have a different work schedule and things like that? Because those are the sorts of things that do put people off. And they have done huge railroads towards creating a better working environment. But I think ultimately you still don't get very many women comparative to men applying, which is really, really sad. So I know their mission was to get it to 20%, and they are not even remotely near it.
Well, here's hoping things start to change. We know with the pandemic and everything that can inspire change in all walks of life. So hopefully that's one of them, and hopefully we see some positive effects for golf as well. Mandy, thanks so much on behalf of everyone. There's been a lot of comments in there as well, I should say. Just very much thanking you. Fascinating to talk. So very much appreciate you coming on, talking to everyone. I'm going to hand back to Alistair now, and he will take us to the next step.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, thanks, Mike. Mandy, I mean, I don't know where to start really, because I'm still sort of scribbling down notes and adding bits and pieces in, and you know, well, you're my hero now, having listened to that, and I think I speak for the 50 odd participants on the call. I mean, it's just inspiring to listen to, and just looking at some of my notes, you know, I think probably the takeaway is teamwork, or, you know, it's integrated within everything that you've said. Teamwork and trust are kind of two words that I've written down a lot, and it's certainly something, as you touched on and I spoke about at the beginning, really, it's really important, I think, for us as coaches in industry to have that underpinning where we go forwards with golf, and particularly for coaches who are so, you know, their life is outside playing golf, and then they can't do it, and we need that trust and that team around us. So I think you've absolutely inspired us all to kind of, you know, just to really remind ourselves about that importance. Your stories are, you know, it's great. There's a point to them, and it really shines through. And you know, so I think that's really good for us to take away and talk about that more. I know you said you wouldn't particularly plug your book, but I shamelessly will. Everybody, yes, exactly. Can't be on this call without this book. It's on Amazon. It's just a no-brainer. If you haven't ordered it already, then definitely order it now. So thank you so much. I know you said you've dipped in and out of golf, and hopefully we can inspire you to come back to golf. The deal is, if ever you do, then you must contact one of our coaches.
I will, definitely.
But I'd also like you to give us permission to, when we write your name in our diaries, to write it in as Big Bird. Once.
Oh, okay. I'll hold you to that. Yeah, that's fine.
Just once in the diary, just once. But no, thank you so much for giving up your time and telling us the stories. We're going to look a little bit now at the poll and break our coaches into discussions. So we'll leave you now, but enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you.
Thanks, guys. Honestly, absolute pleasure to meet you all. I hope you all stay safe, and more importantly, sane.
Yes.
Thank you then. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Mandy. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.